Put your headphones on. Now.
Welcome to Dreadloop, where the silence feels heavier.
If the storm had broken 3 hours earlier, the bus would not have left. The bus left. The bus left at 8:14 in the morning on Friday, October 4th, 1957, from the loading area in front of Logbook Consolidated Elementary in Aroostook County, Maine. The substitute teacher who counted the children boarding, it was my mother. She counted them twice. The first count was 8. The second count was 8. The bus was found 3 hours later in a stretch of standing water on Route 167 as 7 children were inside it. The county sheriff signed a report later that afternoon, stating that 7 children had boarded the bus that morning, and 7 children had been recovered, and that no child was missing. My mother filed the sheriff's report in the school office on Monday morning. That night, she wrote in her own logbook that the count had been 8 in the morning and 7 in the afternoon, and that the 8th was Ellis. She kept the logbook in the bottom drawer of a desk in her bedroom for the next 24 years. She never told another living person, I am her daughter. I found the logbook 6 weeks ago that my name is Imogen Whitfield. I was born in 1964. I am a reference librarian, retired 3 years, in Bangor, Maine. My mother was Cordelia Hadley, born in 1928 in Caribou, married to my father in 1963, mother to me in 1964, and gone of a stroke in May of 1981 when I was 16. She had been a substitute teacher in the Logbook district from 1952 to 1970. She left teaching the year I was 6 and went into the public records office of the county, where she stayed until her death. She was a quiet woman. She did not give speeches at our kitchen table. She did not narrate her own life. I knew, growing up, that she had been a teacher. I knew that she had liked it. I did not know about the bus. I did not know about Ellis Tremblay. I did not know about the logbook in the bottom drawer of her bedroom desk. My father lived another 42 years after my mother. He never remarried. He kept her things. He kept them in the same room they had been in when she died. I think my father, who was a careful and loving man and not a sentimental one, had decided that the contents of my mother's drawers were her business and not his to investigate. He died in November of last year, 2023, and I came home to Logbook to clean out the house, and I found, in a cardboard box on the floor of my mother's bedroom closet, a black canvas-covered logbook with the school district's stamp on the inside cover and 43 years of entries written in pencil. The entry for October 4th, 1957, written, by the look of it, in my mother's hand at around 9 in the evening, reads in its entirety as follows: *8. In the morning, 7 in the afternoon. The 8th is Ellis. Where is Ellis? Tell no one. Tell no one. Tell no one. *. That is the entire entry. I want to be clear about what I am about to tell you. I am a reference librarian. I am, professionally, the person you ask when you want to find a thing that is somewhere in a system that has been built, more or less competently, by other people. I am methodical. I do not write speculation in pencil at 9 in the evening. My mother did not either until October 4th, 1957. I'm going to tell you what happened on the bus. What happened to Ellis Tremblay? What happened in my mother's career and her life because of it? And what happened in February of this year when I scanned a photograph that has been sitting in the Aroostook Star newspaper archive since 1957 and saw, in the rear window reflection of the school bus, a face I had spent 6 weeks failing to find anywhere else. A school keeps 2 records of every child. The first is the roster. The second is the count. When they disagree, the roster wins. I want you to remember that. Logbook is an unincorporated village in the southwest corner of Aroostook County, Maine. In 1957, the population was approximately 612. The economy was potato farming and pulpwood. The elementary school served 59 children spread across grades, 1 through 8, in a single-story brick building on the west side of the township road. The bus that picked them up in the mornings was a 1948 Ford B-Series with a yellow body and a stop arm that had been replaced twice. The driver, in the fall of 1957, was a man named Earl Whittam, age 44, a Korean War veteran who had taken the bus job because his back after the war would not let him farmed out the substitute teacher in October of 1957 was my mother. She was 29. She was unmarried. She lived with her older sister in a rented room above the post office, 2 miles from the school, and she walked to work most mornings. The full-time third-grade teacher, a Mrs. Anderson, was on bed rest with her second pregnancy. My mother had been substituting for her since the second week of September. The morning of Friday, October 4th, the forecast called for rain in the afternoon. The forecast was in fact correct, but the rain was about 3 hours early. By 7:30 in the morning, the western sky over Loon Brook was a low slate color and the wind had picked up from the northwest. By 8, when the children began arriving at the loading area in front of the school, the rain had begun. It was not heavy yet. It was the kind of rain that announced itself politely in the first 10 minutes, and then committed. My mother was outside in the loading area in a brown wool coat with a clipboard, counting the children as they boarded the bus. The bus was scheduled to leave at 8:15. The route was Route 167A, the long county road that ran east from the school for 11 miles before looping south through the farms in Township 14. The bus was making its return trip, the morning circuit, picking up children from the outlying farms and bringing them to school. 8 children were on the route. They had boarded at 8 stops between 6:55 and 7:50 in the morning. By the time the bus arrived at the school at 8:06, all 8 were inside it. This part is a documented fact in Earl Whittam's own log, which is in the sheriff's file. Earl Whittam noted in pencil that he had picked up 8 children on the morning circuit, and that all 8 were inside the bus when he reached the school. The bus pulled into the loading area at 8:06. The children remained inside the bus for the next 8 minutes, because my mother had been told by the principal that the school's furnace had not yet warmed the building, and that the children should wait inside the bus until 8:15, at which time they would be brought directly into their classrooms. My mother and Earl Whittam stood at the bus's open door. They counted the children inside. My mother counted 8. Earl Whittam counted 8. The principal had also asked my mother to do a second count against the morning roster to make sure no child had been missed at any of the 8 stops. This was the second count. My mother used a different clipboard for the second count and a different colored pen. The second count was also 8. At 8:14, the bus pulled out of the loading area to make the return trip back along Route 167A. The 8 children were inside the bus. They were on the bus because the principal, looking at the rain coming in across the western sky, had decided to dismiss the school for the day. The children were being driven home. The bus did not arrive at the first drop-off, which was the Tremblay farm, at 8:28, as it should have. The bus did not arrive anywhere on its scheduled route. By 10 in the morning, the principal, who had not yet been able to get a phone line out because of the storm, walked the half-mile to Sadie Lemoyne's general store and used her phone to call the sheriff's office in Caribou. By 11:30, 4 sheriff's deputies and a state trooper were searching Route 167A in the rain. The bus was found at 11-40-7 that morning, 8 miles east of the school, at a low point in the road where standing water had risen to about 14 inches. The bus's engine was off. The children inside were wet, cold, frightened, and alive. There were 7 of them. This is the part the official record does not address. The bus was inside a stretch of road that had been dry at 8:14 and was by 11:47 under more than a foot of water. The deputies who reached the bus would later report, in two separate sworn statements, that the children had told them the bus had stopped about half an hour after leaving the school, that the engine had simply gone quiet, that Earl Whittam had tried to start it again and had not been able to, and that he had walked, against the children's pleas, into the rain to find help. The children did not see Earl Whittam again. He was found alive but disoriented, 2 miles down the road around 12:30 by another deputy. He had no memory of the walk. The 7 children were loaded into a sheriff's vehicle and a state trooper's wagon. They were driven, one at a time, to their farms. Earl Whittam was taken to the small clinic in Caribou and held overnight for observation. The bus was towed to the school's parking area, where it sat for 3 days while the road was cleared. My mother was not present at the bus when it was found. She was at the school. She had spent the 4 hours between 8:15 and 12:15 in the principal's office, on hold with the sheriff, with the school's roster spread out in front. Of her, she had been asked twice by the principal to confirm her morning count. She had said twice that the count was 8 when the children began to be brought back to the school in the afternoon, before being released to their families. My mother stood in the loading area with her clipboard in the same brown wool coat. She counted them as they came in. She counted 7. She counted again. 7th child was Gabriel Roussan, age 9. He was the last to be brought in at 1:50 in the afternoon by a sheriff's deputy named Elmon Pratt, who was the older brother by 27 years of the folklore archivist Sylvia Pratt, who would interview Gabriel in 2002. I will return to that interview. When Gabriel arrived at the school, he was wrapped in a wool blanket the deputy had given him from the back seat of the cruiser. He was small for his age. His mother had been at the school since 11, waiting. When she saw him, she made a sound, my mother wrote. That was not a word. My mother counted Gabriel as he stepped down from the cruiser. She wrote in her logbook that night, * Gabriel was the 7th, and the 7th was Gabriel. The count was right. The count was wrong. I do not know which is which. * The principal, a man named Halloran, whose first name I have not been able to confirm, asked my mother for the morning roster and for both counts. My mother handed him the morning roster. The roster listed 8 names. The principal looked at it. He looked at the loading area, which was by this point empty of children. He asked my mother who the 8th was. My mother said, Ellis Tremblay. The principal said, Ellis Tremblay didn't board the bus this morning. My mother said, I counted him twice. The principal looked at the roster again. He set it down on the desk in front of him. He said, very quietly, * he didn't board the bus this morning, Cordelia. His mother kept him home for the storm. She called the school at 6-30. My mother did not answer. She did not, in her logbook, record what she said next. The next entry in the logbook is dated October 5th, 1957, the next morning. It reads, * I went to the Tremblay farm. The Tremblays had not kept Ellis home. The Tremblays had not called the school. The Tremblays had put Ellis on the bus at 6:55. They were waiting for him to come home when the school called them at noon to say he was safe. I want to read that to you again, more slowly, because the implication of those 4 sentences is the entire architecture of the next 67 years. Of Aroostook County's official record on October 4th, 1950-7. The Tremblays had not kept Ellis home. The Tremblays had not called the school. The Tremblays had put Ellis on the bus at 6:55. They were waiting for him to come home when the school called them at noon to say he was safe. The phone call from the school to the Tremblays was placed by Mr. Halloran at 11:53 a.m. on October 4th. After the bus was found and a roll call was taken in the rain at the site of Route 167, of the roll call did not include Ellis Tremblay's name. Mr. Halloran, holding the bus's morning manifest in his hand, struck Ellis's name from the manifest at 11:55 a.m. with a pencil. He told the Tremblays by telephone that all the children on the bus were safe and accounted for. He used those words. All the children on the bus. Mrs. Tremblay, on the other end of the phone, asked which children. Mr. Halloran read the 7 names. He did not read Ellis's name because he had crossed it off the manifest. Mrs. Tremblay, in the kitchen of the Tremblay farm at 11:55 a.m. on October 4th, 1957, dropped the receiver. Her husband picked it up. He asked Mr. Halloran where his son was. Mr. Halloran said, in a voice that the receiver noise of 1957 Aroostook County telephone lines made small and wavering. Asterisk, I think there has been a mistake on our end about the morning roster. We will sort it out and call you back within the hour. Asterisk, he did not call back. The sheriff's deputies arrived at the Tremblay farm at 1:15 p.m. The Tremblays' account of the morning, that Ellis had boarded the bus at 6:55, that they had watched him board, that the bus had pulled away with him on it, was recorded in the sheriff's file. Mr. Halloran's account, that Ellis had not been on the bus that morning, was also recorded. The sheriff's office took both accounts. The sheriff, a man named Walter Henley, wrote a single-page summary on October 7th that stated the discrepancy could not be resolved on the available evidence, and that the most likely explanation was a parental error of memory under the duress of the storm. The most likely explanation was a parental error of memory. That is the sentence in Sheriff Walter Henley's report. Earl Whittam, when interviewed on October 8th from his hospital bed in Caribou, said he had picked up 8 children. The sheriff's deputy who interviewed him noted in the margin of the interview transcript, in pen, witness still confused from the storm. Earl Whittam's bus log, which had been in the bus when it was found, had 8 children listed, with check marks next to all 8 names. The deputy filed the bus log into the case file and did not address the discrepancy. My mother's 2 counts were, by this point, in the school's records, in 2 different places. The clipboard with the morning count and the clipboard with the second count were both initialed by my mother. The principal had filed them into the school's substitute teacher records on Monday morning. The sheriff requested copies of them on October 8th. The sheriff received the copies on October 9th. Sheriff Walter Henley's summary report, dated October 7th, does not reference my mother's counts. The summary report references only the morning manifest as filed by Mr. Halloran, which had 8 names, the 8th crossed out in pencil at 11:55 .m. The Tremblay family did not, in October of 1957, have the standing to require that the county reopen the case. They were French-Canadian Maine, which in Aroostook County in 1957 was the wrong category of family for that kind of standing. They asked again. In 1971, when the file was sealed by the new sheriff at the Tremblay's continuing request, the official record, the only one that mattered in the county's own administrative system, said that there had been 7 children on the bus on the morning of October 4th, 1957, and that all 7 had returned home safely. A school keeps 2 records of every child. The first is the roster. The second is the count. When they disagree, the roster wins. My mother's count was wrong because the roster was right. That is the sentence Aroostook County agreed on. My mother, by Monday morning of the next week, had filed the second clipboard, with the count of 8, into the school's substitute teacher records, where it would remain for the next 13 years, until the school was consolidated with 3 other district schools and the records were boxed and sent to the county archive in Caribou. She also wrote the entry in her own logbook that evening, the one I read at the start. Asterisk 8 in the morning, 7 in the afternoon. The 8th is Ellis. Where is Ellis? Tell no one. Tell no one. Tell no one. Asterisk. She kept that logbook for the next 24 years. There are 43 logbook entries my mother wrote about Ellis Tremblay between October 4th, 1957, and her death on May 9th, 1981. Most are short. The longest is 2 pages. The second entry, dated October 7th, 1957. The day Sheriff Henley filed his summary, reads, ***, I have read the sheriff's report. The sheriff has read my counts. The sheriff does not believe my counts. The sheriff believes the manifest. The manifest is in the principal's hand, and the sheriff trusts the principal, who is a man and a deacon. I am 29 and unmarried, and I substitute. I will not change my counts. I will keep my logbook. The Tremblays know. The fourth entry. Dated October 14th, 1957. 10 days after the storm. I walked to the Tremblay farm tonight after dinner. Mrs. Tremblay was at the kitchen table. She had set a place for him. She asked me if I had counted him. I said yes. She asked me to keep the count. I said I would. She asked me to never speak of it to anyone outside that kitchen. I said I would not. The seventh entry, dated November 2nd, 1957. Earl Whittam came to my room above. The post office. He was sober. He said he had counted 8. He said the deputy had told him he had counted 7. He said he could not reconcile this. I told him I had counted 8 as well. He cried. He left. I did not see him again. This is the only logbook entry that records a conversation between my mother and Earl Whittam. Earl Whittam drove the bus until October of 1958, at which point he resigned. He drove a delivery truck for a paper company in Halton. Until 1978, when his back finally would not let him drive anymore. He died of a stroke in 1979. He was 66. He had not, as far as anyone in his family later told me, ever spoken to anyone about what happened. On the morning of October 4th, 1957, his daughter, who is alive at 81 and lives in Bangor, told me on the phone in March that her father in his last week had asked her to find a young woman named Cordelia Hadley and to tell her he had counted 8. He had not known that Cordelia Hadley had died 2 years before him. The next 36 entries in my mother's logbook are short and almost identical. They are dated on October 4th of every year between 1958 and 1980. 23 years today. The count is still 8 in the morning, 7 in the afternoon. The Tremblays still set a place. I have not told. 24 years today. The count is still 8 in the morning, 7 in the afternoon. The Tremblays still set a place. I have not told. And so on. The 43rd and final entry is dated April 29th, 1981, 10 days before her stroke. It reads, I have begun to feel that I should tell my daughter. She is 16. She is not yet the kind of person who would carry it, and I do not want her to be that kind of person. I will not tell her. If she finds it, she will find it. I found it 42 years and 7 months later. My mother married my father in November of 1963, 6 years and 1 month after the storm. My father, who had grown up in Presque Isle, did not know the Logbook story in any detail. He knew the bus had been recovered in the rain. He knew 7 children had been brought home. He had, like everyone else in Aroostook County in the early 60s, accepted the official record. My mother did not correct him. I have, since February, gone through every letter my parents exchanged during their 2-year courtship and the first 10 years of their marriage. Ellis Tremblay's name appears in none of them. The bus appears in none of them. My mother, who in every other domain of her life was a careful and exacting correspondent, simply did not write the story to the man she had decided to marry, Gerald Shaw, the Aroostook Star reporter who had taken the photograph and filed the page 3 article, attempted 3 follow-up pieces in the years after the storm. The first, dated April of 1958, was a profile of the Tremblay farm and the family's continued grief. The editor's note returning it to him reads, in pencil at the top of the typescript, Gerald, the family doesn't want this. Drop. Mr. Shaw filed the second in July of 1960. after Edmund Tremblay had appeared at the county courthouse to ask again that the case be reopened. The editor's note on that one is shorter. No, the third was filed in 1963, after a brief item appeared in the Bangor Daily News about a bus route safety review that did not mention Loon Brook. The editor's note on that one is the asterisk Gerald. Leave it asterisk I quoted earlier. Mr. Shaw kept all 3 typescripts in his desk drawer until he retired in 1974. His daughter found them when she cleaned out his house after his death and donated them to the University of Maine in 1991. I read all 3 on a Friday afternoon in February in the Special Collections Reading Room in Orono. They are not considered as journalism exceptional. They are clean and humane and competent. They are the work of a small-town reporter who knew that the official record was wrong and could not, in his lifetime, get the wrongness into print. In 1971, 3 months before Sheriff Walter Henley retired and 4 months before he died of esophageal cancer, the Tremblay family, who had spent 14 years asking the county to reopen the case, made one more request. The new sheriff, a man named Augustus Boucher, agreed to meet with them in his office. The meeting was on June 11, 1971. After the meeting, Sheriff Boucher closed the file. He did not reopen it. He sealed it. The official reason given was to protect the surviving family from continued community speculation. The Tremblay family, by all the accounts I have been able to assemble, did not request that the file be sealed. They had requested that it be reopened. The sealing was Sheriff Boucher's decision, and Sheriff Boucher took the decision in his office alone on the afternoon of June 11, 1971. I have in my hand at this moment the typewritten note Sheriff Boucher dictated to his secretary on the afternoon of June 11, 1971. The note reads, in its second paragraph, the discrepancy in the morning count is best left undisturbed. The community has accepted the official record. The Tremblay family will be informed by letter that further inquiry is not in the public interest. That is the sentence the county used to seal the case. The community has accepted the official record. The file was declassified on March 3, 1992, under a routine 20-year review provision in Maine state law. By 1992, Sheriff Boucher had been dead for 19 years, and Mrs. Tremblay's husband, Edmund, had been dead for 14. Mrs. Tremblay was still alive. She did not, in 1992, ask anyone to act on the declassification. She had stopped asking. In 2002, a regional folklore archivist named Sylvia Pratt, the younger sister, by 27 years, of the deputy who had brought Gabriel Roussan back to the school in the cruiser in 1957, interviewed Gabriel for an oral history project on 20th century rural Maine school memories. Gabriel was 53. He was a real estate appraiser in Presque Isle. The interview was conducted at his office on a Tuesday afternoon in November 2002. The transcript runs 48 pages. The relevant exchange is on pages 31 and 30-2. Pratt. Do you remember how many children were on the bus that morning? Roussan. I do not. I was 9. I remember that the bus was full. I remember the seats. I remember Ellis was sitting 2 seats ahead of me on the right. Pratt. Ellis Tremblay? Roussan. Yes, Pratt. The official record says Ellis Tremblay was not on the bus that morning. He had been kept home for the storm. Roussan. I do not know about the official record. I remember Ellis was on the bus. Pratt. When the bus was found, do you remember Ellis being there? Roussan. I do not. I remember the bus had stopped. I remember the driver had gone outside and not come back. I remember some of us were crying. I remember it got cold. I remember a deputy opened the door, and I was scared of him at first because he had a flashlight and the rain was loud. I do not remember Ellis at the moment the deputy opened the door. I remember Ellis at 6:55 at the Tremblay farm, because we boarded together at the same stop. **** Pratt. Was Ellis on the bus when it stopped on the road? ***Rusan. I think he was. I cannot tell you for certain. I was 9. I am 53. I have lived between those two ages without thinking about this question. I am thinking about it now because you are asking me, and I do not have a good answer. ***, Pratt. Thank you, Mr. Ruzan. Ruzan. I have something to add. The Tremblay family kept a place for Ellis at every meal in their kitchen for the rest of Edmund Tremblay's life, and for as long as Mrs. Tremblay continued to set the table herself. My mother told me this when I was 12. My mother also told me not to ever speak of it. I have not. Until today. The Pratt interview was filed in the Regional Folklore Archive in 2002 and has been publicly available, on request, since 2004. Sylvia Pratt did not draw further attention to it. She was not. In 2002, an investigative journalist. She was a folklore archivist documenting 20th century rural Maine memory, of which the missing 8th child of October 4th, 1957, was a single transcript among approximately 1,100. In the 22 years between the Pratt interview and February of 2024, no one read the transcript. The archive's request log, which I obtained through a Freedom of Access request to the Maine State Library, shows that the transcript file had been opened twice. Once in 2007 by a graduate student writing a thesis on rural school transportation, and once in 2016 by the woman who had been Gabriel Rusin's third-grade teacher in 1957, who was by then 93. The graduate student did not cite the transcript. The teacher did not cite it either. The teacher's self-published memoir, when it appeared in 2016, includes the page 3 photograph reprinted in Chapter 4 with the caption "The Brave Seven." The memoir does not mention Ellis Tremblay by name. The teacher had taught him for 2 weeks in September of 1957 before the storm. She had remembered him, at 93, well enough to read the Pratt transcript, but not apparently well enough to name him in her own book. She died in 2019. Her papers are in the Aroostook Historical Society. I read them in March. I requested the transcript on January 23, 2024. I read it on the morning of January 24th. I read it standing up at the dining room table in my apartment in Bangor. By 2 p.m. that afternoon, I had ordered, by interlibrary loan, every issue of the Aroostook Star from the second week of October, 1957. They arrived on February 9th. I want to be careful with what I am about to tell you, because I have had 4 weeks to think about it, and I have had 4 weeks to be wrong about it, and I have not, in 4 weeks, been wrong about it. The Aroostook Star of October 5th, 1957, was a Saturday edition, 12 pages, sold for 8 cents. The lead front page story was about a hunting accident in Township 12. The October 4th bus story was on page 3 of the local section, which was the 7th page overall. The headline was *, 7 brave Logbook children found safe after storm. *, the byline was a man named Gerald Shaw. Mr. Shaw had been the Aroostook Star's general assignment reporter since 1946. He had died in 1979. I have read everything else he wrote between 1955 and 1960. He was a careful reporter and a humane one. He filed 3 follow-up pieces on the Tremblay family in 1958, 1960, and 1963, all of which the Aroostook Star's editor declined to run. The first 2 are in his personal papers, which his daughter donated to the University of Maine in 1991. The third was returned to him with a note from the editor that, "Read in pencil, Gerald, leave it." The page 3 article from October 5th ran above a single photograph. The photograph was taken at 7 in the morning on October 5th, the day after the storm, by Mr. Shaw himself on a speed graphic camera. The photograph shows the 7 children who had been found in the bus, bundled in coats, climbing back onto the same bus to be driven, this time by a different driver, the 8 miles east on Route 167A to the school where their parents would pick them up. The bus had been towed from the standing water section of the road and back to the school's parking area on October 4th in the afternoon. And on October 5th in the morning, the children had been collected at their farms and put back on the bus to symbolically complete the trip the storm had cut short. The picture was, in 1957 local newspaper terms, a feel-good closer. The 7 children are visible in the photograph. They are climbing onto the bus in the rain in coats too big for them. The bus is photographed from the rear left, at a slight upward angle. The rear window of the bus is visible in the upper right of the frame. The window is wet. There's a reflection in the window. I scanned the photograph at maximum resolution at 1:48 in the morning on a Tuesday in February 2024. My dining room table is a long oak table that my husband and I bought in 2004. My husband was asleep upstairs. The flatbed scanner is from 2019, which is to say it is an unremarkable consumer-grade machine. The scan took 92 seconds. I want to tell you what the dining room sounded like at 1:48 in the morning. The radiator was ticking. The wall clock was the kind I had inherited from my mother, the same one she had had above the kitchen sink in our house in Logbook, which my father had kept above his sink for 42 years, and which I had taken down to Bangor in November when I cleaned out the house. The clock has a soft tick. The cat was asleep on the chair to my right. There was no other sound. I opened the scan in the image editing program I use for old family photographs. I cropped to the rear window. The crop region was approximately 300 pixels by 400 pixels. I increased the resolution. I sharpened 3 steps. I waited. I want to say this part slowly. There was a face in the rear window of the bus. The face was not in the bus. The bus was empty. The bus had been towed back to the school the day before. The 7 children were on the steps outside the bus, climbing aboard with their backs to the rear window. The rear window was reflecting the school's loading area, which was empty at 7 in the morning on October 5th, 1957. Because Mr. Shaw was the only person there besides the children, the face was in the reflection of the rear window. I sat at my dining room table for what I will tell you was about 6 minutes without doing anything. The cat got up and left the chair and went into the kitchen. I heard her drink from her water bowl. I heard her come back. I heard her settle on a different chair. The clock ticked. The radiator ticked. I did not move. The face in the reflection was a child. It was a boy. He was perhaps 9 years old. He was wearing a wool cap and a coat that was not quite buttoned at the top. He was facing the camera. He was not standing in the line of 7. He was standing somewhere behind the photographer in the loading area, and the rear window of the bus was angled in such a way that his face was being reflected back from a position the photographer's eye was not pointed at. The photographer did not see him. The photographer was looking through the camera at the 7 children boarding the bus. The reflection was geometry, and the photographer did not check it, because the photographer was a small-town newspaper man with a speed graphic and a story to file by 10 in the morning, and you do not check the reflection in the rear window of a bus when you are taking a feel-good closer about 7 brave Logbook children. The photograph went to the printer at the Aroostook Star on the afternoon of October 5th, 1957. It ran on page 7 of the next morning's edition. It has been reprinted since in the 1963 Aroostook County School Memorial Booklet, the 1971 Logbook Consolidated 20th Anniversary Pamphlet, the 1992 Maine Public Broadcasting Feature A Half-Century of Storms, the 2007 Aroostook Historical Society Yearbook, and a 2016 self-published memoir by a woman who had been Gabriel, Roussan's third-grade teacher in 1957 and who had, after her retirement, written a book about the children she had taught. He had been in the photograph since 1957. He had been in the photograph the morning the photograph went to the printer. He had been in the photograph every time the photograph was reprinted in every yearbook and every memorial booklet and every county history pamphlet for 67 years. He had been there. They had not seen him. I went and looked at the 8x10 print of Ellis Tremblay's third-grade school photograph that I had requested by interlibrary loan from the Aroostook Historical Society on January 30th, 2024. The print had arrived on February 6th and had been on my dining room table in a manila folder for 9 days. I had not opened it. I do not know why I had not opened it. I had not, until that moment, allowed myself to admit that I was looking for him. I had been telling myself for 2 weeks that I was reconstructing my mother's record. That was true. It was not the only thing that was true. I held the 8x10 print up to the lamp. Ellis Tremblay's third-grade school photograph was taken in September of 1957, 3 weeks before the storm. He is wearing a wool cap, even though the photograph is indoors. The cap had been his older cousin's. Solange Tremblay would tell me in the kitchen 10 days later that Ellis had refused to take the cap off for the photograph, and that the photographer had let him keep it on because he liked the way it looked. The coat is not visible in the school portrait because the school portrait is shot from the chest up. The wool cap is the same one. The set of the mouth is the same one. The eyes are the same. I held the print up next to the cropped reflection. On my screen dot, it was the same boy. I sat at the dining room table for the rest of the night. I did not move the cropped reflection off the screen. I did not move the school portrait off the table. I did not. The way you do when you have found something you have been looking for. Get up and pace the room or call my husband or write anything. Down I sat. I looked. The cat slept. The clock ticked. The radiator, around 4:30, made the small clicking sound it makes when the morning thermostat kicks in. The cat woke up. She walked across the dining room floor and sat by the back door. I let her out. I came back to the table dot at 5:45. I called the Tremblay farm. Solange Tremblay, age 94, picked up the phone on the 4th ring. She said, "Hello." I said, Mrs. Tremblay, my name is Imogen Whitfield. My mother was Cordelia Hadley. She said, "I know." I said, "I have something to show you." She said, "Bring it." I drove from Bangor to Loon Brook on the morning of February 22nd, 2024. The drive is 3 hours and 12 minutes in good weather. The weather that morning was light snow dot. The Tremblay farm is at the end of a dirt road 3 miles east of the village. It is a small white clapboard house with a kitchen, L on the north side, and a barn that has been unused since 1996. Solange Tremblay was at the kitchen door when I arrived. She was a small woman, very upright, with white hair pinned back. She had on a gray cardigan. She had eyes the color of slate. She did not invite me in. She stepped back from the doorway, which I understood as the invitation. I came in. I took off my coat. I hung it on the same iron hook her son Ellis would have hung his coat on if he had come home from the bus on October 4th, 1950-7. The kitchen table was set for 9. It had been set for 9. Solange told me, every Sunday for 67 years and 3 months. Edmund, who had died in 1978, had set the table for the first 21 years. Solange had set it after that. Their 3 living children, who had been born after Ellis and who had all moved out of the county by 1975, had each, when they had still lived at home, contributed 1 place setting per Sunday meal. The table had remained set for 9 after the children moved out. Solange did this herself. I laid the printout of the photograph and the printout of the school portrait side by side on the kitchen table next to the place setting that had been Ellis's. I did not say anything. I had not, on the drive from Bangor, planned what I would say. I had thought I would know when I arrived. I did not know when I arrived. I laid the printouts down and I stepped back. Solange Tremblay looked at the printouts for what I will tell you was about 3 minutes. She did not pick them up. She did not move closer to the table. She stood with one hand on the back of the chair that had been Ellis's. She looked at the school portrait first, and then at the cropped reflection, and then back at the school portrait, and then at the cropped reflection. She nodded once. She said, asterisk, he was always there. We never lost him. The sheriff said we did. We did not. Asterisk, she sat down in Ellis's chair. She put both hands flat on the table on either side of the place setting. She did not cry. I have been trying for 2 weeks to find the right word for what she did. The word I have settled on is settled. She settled in the chair. She had been waiting for 67 years and 3 months for someone to show her the count had been right. And someone had shown her, and she settled. She said, after another minute, your mother knew. I said yes. She said, asterisk, she came to the door the week after. She told me she had counted him twice. I asked her not to say it to anyone else. She did not. I said no. Asterisk, Solange said, I am glad you came. She said, I would like to keep these. I said, they are yours. I said, asterisk, I have one more thing. The logbook. My mother's logbook. There are 43 entries about Ellis. I would like to read them to you, if you would let me. Asterisk, Solange Tremblay said, I would like that, she said. I will put on tea. I read the 43 entries to her at her kitchen table over the course of about 40 minutes, while she sat in Ellis's chair with her hand on the place setting and the tea in front of her. She did not interrupt. The tea cooled. The kitchen clock, which was a small white plastic one above the stove, ticked at a slightly faster rate than the one in my dining room in Bangor, and at some point I noticed the rate and stopped noticing. It didn't read on. When I came to the entries between 1958 and 1980, the 36 identical short ones, I read each of them. I did not abridge. I read asterisk 20-3 years today. The count is still 8 in the morning, 7 in the afternoon. The Tremblay still set a place. I have not told. And then 24 years today. And then 25 years today, asterisk and so on. Solange's hand on the place setting did not move while I read those. When I finished, she said, your mother was a very good substitute teacher. I said, I know. She said, asterisk, I am not, Mrs. Whitfield, going to ask you what you think happened to him. I am not going to ask anyone that. I have spent a long life not asking anyone that. I am going to ask you something else. I am going to ask you to leave the photograph and the school portrait on this table tonight, and to come back in the morning and pick them up. I would like to sit with them. I said, of course. Asterisk, I drove back to the small motel in Caribou where I had reserved a room. I went back to the Tremblay farm at 9 the next morning. The photograph and the school portrait were on the table in their same positions, next to the same place setting. Solange was in the kitchen making oatmeal. She handed the printouts back to me wrapped in a clean linen napkin. She said, thank you. She said, I would like to know your mother's birthday so I can light a candle on it. I told her. I drove home. The snow had stopped. The road was clear. I am at my dining room table now. It is the 2nd of March, 2024. The logbook is on the table to my left. The photograph and the school portrait, which Solange Tremblay returned to me on the morning of February 23rd, wrapped in a clean linen napkin, are framed on the wall over the buffet, side by side, in 2 matching black frames I bought at a craft store in Bangor on Wednesday afternoon. Solange kept her own copies. She had had them made before she went to bed the night I left them on her kitchen table. The case is not solved. What happened to Ellis Tremblay between 6:55 in the morning, when he boarded the bus at his family's farm, and 11:47, when the deputies arrived at the standing water on Route 167A and counted 7 children inside the bus, is not known. It will not be known. Earl Whitten is dead. Sheriff Henley is dead. Sheriff Boucher is dead. Mr. Halloran is dead. Gerald Shaw is dead. The 7 children who were on the bus are, with the exception of Gabriel Roussan, also dead, and Gabriel Roussan, when I called him last week, said only, *, I have no more to add to the Pratt transcript. I am sorry. *, the file in the county archive in Caribou now contains a copy of my mother's logbook entries and the cropped image from the rear window of the bus, dated February 23, 2024, signed by the current sheriff. The official record of Aroostook County, as of last week, says that on October 4, 1957, 8 children boarded the school bus at Loonbrook Consolidated, and 7 children disembarked. A school keeps 2 records of every child. The first is the roster, the second is the count. When they disagree, the roster wins. Sometimes, 67 years late, somebody changes the count back. I am going to make dinner now. There is a pork chop in the refrigerator. There is a baked potato. There is, on the wall, a pair of black frames side by side. Inside the right frame, in the reflection of a wet rear window of a school bus, a boy in a wool cap is looking out at me. He has been there for 67 years. He is going to keep looking back. I am going to make dinner.